Welcome to Walking the Way. This is Book Club. We're still reading Renovation of the Heart in the chapter on radical evil in the ruined soul. This week we're on question 4, which is, in helping people to find Christ and follow through with spiritual formation in Him, can we start with self-esteem? Why or why not? Is there a grain of truth in the self-esteem approach to life? If so, what is it? The quote that starts off the section that goes with this question is pretty clear. The initial move towards Christ-likeness cannot be towards self-esteem, largely because of the confusion about what self-esteem means, and because realistically, I'm not okay and you're not okay. And he closes that paragraph with the sentence, a high opinion of ourselves will only make those consequences more difficult to deal with. That line of reasoning made me think of a quote by C.S. Lewis. I know I quote Lewis a lot, but he's one of the authors whom I'm most read of. The idea that came to my head was that, yes, we're just wrong. When we esteem ourselves, we usually, because we don't know ourselves very well, our opinion of ourselves is just inaccurate. And so starting from an inaccurate view of ourselves, whenever we try to build an identity and reality off of that, we're bound to fail because we've started from a point of unreality. And the quote that Lewis says all of that much better in is, no man knows how bad he is until he has tried very hard to be good. A silly idea is current that good people do not know what temptation means. This is an obvious lie. Only those who try to resist temptation know how strong it is. After all, you find out the strength of the German army by fighting against it, not by giving in. You find out the strength of a wind by trying to walk against it, not by lying down. A man who gives into temptation after 5 minutes simply does not know what it would have been like an hour later. That is why bad people, in one sense, know very little about badness. They have lived a sheltered life by always giving in. We never find out the strength of the evil impulse inside us until we try to fight it, and Christ, because he was the only man who never yielded to temptation, is also the only man who knows to the full what temptation means, the only complete realist.
I'd say agree with all of that. In contrast, so yes, there's an extent to which if we hold a high esteem for ourselves, we're misunderstanding ourselves because we are fallen, sinful creatures, and it's an incorrect approach to think that we're sufficient as we are. But going back to another thing referenced by this question, the back half of it, in terms of whether there's a grain of truth to the self-esteem approach. We kind of touched on that somewhat last week when we went through another Lewis passage where he talks about how there's no ordinary people and how the possibility of how great someone can be. And that's sort of the flip side of the self-esteem approach is I think that for a lot of non-Christians, it's easy for them to see themselves as relatively good people and
right.
to hold themselves with high esteem. And for Christians, it's easy for us to see us as fallen and sinful and dreadful and not understand our potential and how God views us. And so on the flip side of this, it is important to understand how much God loves you, how uniquely special you are as a human being as compared to any of God's other creations. Like we are the only one made in his image. We are uniquely special, and we have a unique capacity for relationship with God and we're made in his image, but being in relationship with him, that's what I'm looking for.
Yeah, like we alone are accounted worthy to that type of relationship with him because we bear his image. And we have been talking in our Bible study about, we're going through Luke, and we just, maybe a week or two ago, went through the first section of Luke chapter 7, where the centurion sends for Jesus to come heal his servant. And he sends his friends to speak on his behalf, who are leaders in the Jewish community that he's over. And that's the specific word that they use when they entreat Jesus' aid for this man, is to say that he's worthy of Jesus to do this thing for him. And that word worthy has connotations of fitness and of propriety. Like, because he's a human being, it is appropriate for you to act on his behalf in ways that it wouldn't be appropriate to act on the behalf of any other of his creations, because, like I said, uniquely we are bearers of his image, and so special effort is warranted to save us. And there's something that really cannot be saved in any other way. That an older theological word that doesn't get used very much is aveternal, which is to say that something that has a beginning but does not have an end. And all human souls, any created spiritual being, falls into that category, that there's a beginning but there's no end. And because that's true, like, you can't move something into new creation. Like, an aveternal being cannot get into new creation by any means other than God's direct intervention. Whereas, like a dog, God could, and probably maybe has, who knows, made the exact same dog multiple times. Whereas, like, with a human being or any kind of being, that's just not possible. And therefore, it is appropriate for God to expend that extra effort to pay the price that he paid in order to redeem us and to bring us into new creation and right relationship with him.
Yeah, exactly. So basically what I'm getting at is just, when we think of self-esteem, like, when you first read the question, I at least see self-esteem and think like the modern self-love approach to life.
Which is more like self-worship.
Which is self-worship. And we've gone into, I don't know if we've done it for the channel before, but we've talked about the appropriate view of self-love and what that actually looks like. But in contrast to that form of self-esteem, there is an appropriate self-esteem, which is understanding your nature and the plans that God has for you. And that is actually a productive pursuit while seeking Christ-ordered spiritual formation. So it depends on whether or not self-esteem is helpful, depends on your view of self-esteem and whether you're looking at it through the appropriate lens.
I think we pretty comprehensively covered that question.
Yeah.
So I'll leave our audience with this. I think everyone errs in one direction or the other. So I think it would be productive both to reflect on which of those two directions you err towards, and meditate on what the other side has to offer and how you could integrate thinking about that into your spiritual disciplines. So, for instance, if you tend towards perfectionism, which is, I think, an error in the direction of low self-esteem, consider how you might reinforce the idea of God's value for you as a spiritual discipline. So with that, I think we'll leave you and see you next time.
Thank you for watching today's episode of Walk in the Way Book Club. Please like, comment, and share this video, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more content. We can't wait to see you in the next one. God bless.